2.55 billion. The monies that are appropriated in budget and reflected in the budget estimates are simply our first estimate of the expected payment under contract for abatement that comes forward under the fund. And as I was explaining to Senator Urquhart,
the 1.4, you mean?
That's the. Yeah. I think it was 1.1, but was it 1.4 or 1.1?
I've got 1.4, but whatever's in the estimates. I think I get where you're heading.
That's our estimate. Senator, I should point out to you that it's highly likely with a scheme of this nature, while of course we do to the best of our ability provide an estimate to finance, which they quality assure of how the money will be spent, that number will naturally vary as the abatement comes forward differently, and that is not unusual. There are many programs that see their estimates vary across the forwards that depend on participation.
And Senator, it's also, just to your question, it's not at all unusual for government to contract beyond the forward estimates, be that in things like lease or rental agreements, be it in contracting for the building of major infrastructure projects. Contracting beyond the forward estimates is not an unusual item. Budgets are, or funding is approved by government for that to be undertaken, and it's quite commonplace. There are approvals obviously required for that that are well established in government processes, but there's nothing unusual for contracts that run more than the 4-year cycle of the budget.
But in terms of your election commitment and the minister's announcement on 24 April, the 2.5 billion, is there anything that would compel you to contract out that much, or are we opening up the possibility of a significant underspend relative to the minister's announcement? Like you could spend 1.4 and not have anything contracted out that would take you anything close to 2.5, and that would still be perfectly fine, wouldn't it? So we can announce 2.5 billion and be completely satisfied if the department spends only 2/3 of that.
I guess perhaps if the abatement challenge is realised at a lower cost, hypothetically, but Senator, I mean, it's the government's expectation that this is what will be required in the initial stages of the ERF to move us towards the 5% reduction task. We're not budgeting funds with an intention of not utilising them for their purpose. That's for sure.
Well, there's a long and dishonourable history of massive underspend on environmental programs. And I'm not taking a shot at the coalition because that's happened under Labor governments as well. Big announcements, lots of ribbon cutting, great press statements, and then you come back 3 years later and the money hasn't been spent. That's happened over and over again.
And Dr. Kennedy highlighted before that there could be factors that cause variations, but that would be based on the principles of the ERF in terms of achieving value for money outcomes, verifiable and additional abatement that meets our overall objectives.
There's a lot of stuff now in the climate science literature that suggests that we've blown the possibility of staying within the 2-degree threshold, that sort of arguable definition of what takes us into dangerous climate change and out the other side into catastrophic climate change. Does everyone at the table here really seriously believe that the government's policy is going to be sufficient to decarbonise the economy, or are we just really wasting our time?
You're asking us our opinions on government policy?
No, I'm asking you a policy question. Do we have the policies in place under this government to decarbonise the economy? And this is probably better directed at Senator Birmingham, but I don't mind who takes it. Prime Minister assures us he believes climate change is real. Are the measures that this government outlined sufficient to decarbonise the economy as rapidly as is required, or not?
Well, Senator, the measures we're outlining are to meet the abatement challenge that the government committed to in a bipartisan sense when it was set previously. That's the policy profile and planning that we're working towards.
Senator Birmingham, is it going to keep us under 2 degrees as far as Australia's commitment to the global efforts?
Senator Ludlam, you well know that that's going to be determined by what happens globally.
And what Australia, we are part of planet
Yes,
Earth, Senator
yes,
Birmingham,
yes,
so are we going to be
yes,
doing
yes,
our part?
indeed. But will our policy keep us under 2 degrees? Well, Senator, that's a foolish question.
No, you cut
because,
me off
because
halfway
you-
through the question. Consistent with our international obligations and the carbon
Last
intensity
question
of our
as we
economy.
break for
Yep.
dinner, Senator Ludlam. If
That's
there's
fine.
a question or an argument.
No, it's not an argument.
Consistent
My
with our
question-
unconditional commitment to reduce emissions by 5% on 2000 levels, we have the policies
And
to
you
do
think
so.
5%
At that, we will
sufficient?
now break